So I just talked about Kant's theory in general, and now I will say a few more words. Oops. The phone is dying. I hope it will stay alive until I finish this video. So I will say a few words about how an action is according to duty, as Kant says, and where do we find this. And if you may, please follow me by opening your pages, your book. I'm telling you, today is a bad day. On page 12, and look at the last paragraph that begins on page 12 and goes on page 13. Those are the last two lines on page 12. The second preposition is this. So I will read together with you, and I will stop from time to time and explain what he means, and perhaps give an example in connection to that. You do have some questions online in which I ask you to discuss some of the examples that he is mentioning about stealing or about promising something and so on. So I will let you do all this in the questions. So here it is. An action done from duty has its moral worth not in the purpose that is to be attained by it, but in the maxim according to which the action is determined. So an action done from duty does not consider the purpose, what I want to accomplish with that action. Because if I consider the purpose, then I am a consequentialist. So we go back last week. That's consequentialism, right? Now, and Kant says the purpose can always be different, and he discusses that before. It may well be that when he talks about the shopkeeper, I do not overcharge people because I have clear interest, because I want me to have a certain success in my business. So I will not want to have bad fame and so on. But in order for me to act out of duty, I only consider something else, and we'll see what we consider, but not the consequences, because the consequences cannot determine the worthiness of an action, because I may only think about my own interest whenever I think about the consequences for my action. So I'm kind of excited about Kant, to be honest. I think he's wrong in some cases, but I won't discuss that, not now. The moral worth depends, therefore, not on the realization of the object of the action, as we said, but merely, and now we see what is the principle, merely on the principle of volition according to which, without regard to any object of the faculty of desire, so it's not about what I desire, the action has been done. From what has gone before, it is clear that the purposes which we may have in our actions, as well as their effects, regarded as ends and incentives of the will, cannot give to actions any unconditioned and moral worth. So everything that we have done so far, Kant says, shows that our inclinations, our desires, or our incentives that have anything to do with our actions cannot give our action moral worth. Then where do we find moral worth? Where then, he says, can this worth lie if it is not to be found in the will's relation to the expected effect? So if it's not a consequentialist theory, where do we find the worthiness of our action? Nowhere but in the principle of the will, with no regard to the ends that can be brought about through such an action. For the will stands, as it were, at a crossroads between its a priori principle, which is formal, and its a posteriori incentive, which is material. A priori, a priori, and a posteriori, whatever you say in English. In the sense in which those are obviously Latin words, and I do not know exactly how to pronounce them in English. A priori and a posteriori would be in Latin, but anyway, what do they mean? A priori is always before experience. It's principle of the will before any kind of experience. I don't have to experience anything in order to know that something is, so how I should consider it to be. A posteriori comes always after experience. Okay, so, and since it must be determined by something, it must be determined by the formal principle of volition if the action is done from duty, and in that case, every material principle is taken away from it. So, what is its principle? I have to maximize I have to think of my maxim to be a universal law of nature, the maxim of the action. So, all actions are done according to some maxims. I have a principle according to which I act, Kant will say. If my maxim says I lie in this situation, I will do it out of duty only the moment in which I can also will that my maxim becomes a universal law of nature. That is, all people in the same situation will lie. Suppose I need money from you, and in order for me to get money, and I know you will never give me money if I tell you the truth, and I have to lie. I have to say something about I don't know, my bad situation, how horrible my life has been, how much I need it, how much I will die if you don't give me the money, and whatever else. I can also make a false promise about whether I return the money to you or not. So I ask you to give me money, and I will say I will give them back to you, but knowing that I will never be able to do so. And please discuss that also in your question. Can I do that or not? Kant says, well, I can, as long as I can will that my maxim, I will make a false promise, can also be willed to become a universal law of nature. But if I do so, I deny my own action. You see, it's not about morality here. So I just got a phone call while I was speaking about this, not about morality, so the video stopped. Let me try to continue. So it's not about morality in what sense? In the sense in which I don't think prior whether to lie or not is a moral action or not. It's the will or the maxim the will that can, my will that can, let me repeat it, will the maxim determines whether my action is moral or not. So if I think back about the false premise, can I will this maxim? I will make a promise, knowing I will make a false promise to become a universal law of nature. I cannot. I cannot do so, because if I do so, then everybody lies. Lying itself is no longer even understandable. It will not achieve I will not achieve my purposes, So I'm not saying that the will is because of purposes, but I'm saying that because I will not achieve my purposes, the maxim is denied. And the maxim being denied, I cannot will it to be a universal law of nature, which means the lying is forbidden. And it's forbidden, Kant says, in all circumstances. It does not matter whether it's I seem to achieve some good purposes or not. So I will ask you for one. I will give you one example, and please consider to talk about it in the comments. Kant says that lying is forbidden. Okay. Imagine the situation. I'm in Nazi Germany, and a Jew hides in my attic. A Gestapo, SS officer, however you call those guys, comes to my door and asks me whether some Jew is hiding in my attic. What is the moral action to do according to Kant? Should I tell the truth or not? Actually, Kant will say that I should tell the truth. But let's discuss it. What I'm trying to encourage you to do is to discuss it. Do you think he's right when he says that? Do you think that he's right that in any kind of situation I should tell the truth regardless of the consequences of my action? So I look forward to reading your comments, and see you next time.